Hello and welcome to the Box Score Network NFL Draft Show. My name is Simon. Joining me here is a plethora of hosts from Box Score Network. You probably know most of their faces by now. If you have been here before, we will introduce them one at a time as we kind of get to everybody's picks. But as you know from the title, the reason you are here is we're here for our mock draft 2.0. This is our official second mock draft at Box Score Network. Kind of a post free agency hoopla situation here. We're recording this Wednesday the 11th. So if we say anything that makes no sense as of Thursday morning or later. You know why, but we've gotten through the tampering period. We've gotten through the official first day of a free agency. We've changed the graphic at the 14th pick from one team to another team back to the first team. And there's some fun drama and whatnot going on. But we are here representing Box Score Network, the Box Score Network draft show, draft team, and Ronan Summers is here as well. So welcome in, everybody. Thank you all for being here. We are skipping the Raiders pick at one because it's Fernando Mendoza. I tried to egg almost everybody on this call at one point or another on my own show into saying the Raiders should trade the pick. That's not happening. We're not there at this point. So Fernando Mendoza is going to be number one. In fact, if you want a really good breakdown on why Mendoza is a good first overall pick, also check out Austin's 1.0 big board, which is up on this channel as well. So we have big boards, we have mock drafts, draft conversations, all on this channel. If this is your first time here, thank you. Like, subscribe, comment, draft content for you every day, all the time. Let's get straight to our mock draft. So here's what our board is going to look like for everybody. This is Box Score Network Mock Draft 2.0. As you can see, the Raiders took Fernando Mendoza, number one overall. Austin of Tricky Takes is here. I guess this is everybody's top left. So Austin, say hi to the folks. Say anything you want to get off your chest before you have to represent the New York Jets of all teams, and then make your selection at number two overall.
Thank you for that introduction. I'm excited to have the first true selection here. I get to really kick the ball for the first time and get it rolling downhill. This is going to be a fun mock draft, but it's unfortunate I have to do it for the Jets because this is a franchise that has no hope, and the coach will be fired within the first 9 weeks of the season. I'm calling it here and now. But either way, we got to make a selection here as the GM. And again, we talked about this before the show. This is a what we would do mock draft. This is not necessarily a predictive mock draft. This isn't necessarily what I think will happen, but I do kind of think this one in particular is pretty likely. And I'm going with the Miami Hurricane, Ruben Bain Jr., the defensive lineman. I don't know if you want to call him an edge. I think he plays majority of his snaps on the edge, but slides all around that line and is a very disruptive. The Jets have signed quite a few guys uh, since free agency started, and that did scare me off this pick a little bit. But a lot of them are 1 year deals and not big money contracts. So when you're able to grab a player like Ruben Bain, who is going to be super versatile for you. You're going to be able to play him in multiple fronts, multiple alignments, and rotate and keep guys fresh and healthy with this group of guys you've got who are all going to be veterans to help Ruben Bain. So I think this is a really good situation for him to fall to. I have him really high on my big board. He's my highest graded player in this draft class, so well worth the number two selection.
With Bain, and you mentioned all the free agent moves, but all of those were kind of like veteran stopgap types.
Mhm.
Like those are the guys that Aaron Glenn is bringing in as out of desperation to try and get somewhat competent for the season. Does Bain to you then does he mean out of all the defenders you could have taken to add to that group that that's kind of your skeleton key? Like he's the one that's going to come out on top and like because of the foundation that the Jets signed, he'd be the finishing piece to like having a really good season? Or is this more a we did the free agent moves to get better for 2026, but Bain is my 2026 and beyond. Like he's more about the future than trying to help this year right now.
Uh, I think he is more of the future pick. I think you could select guys who are slightly higher current immediate impact to this defense. That's no doubt in my opinion at all. But in Bain, you're getting someone who is an impact player immediately. He's not this some total developmental prospect who's all tools. He has legitimate skills and talent to go along with tools. And so he's able to help out now, work in rotation with these veterans, and then really take the reins towards the back half of this year and then become the, maybe the new franchise defensive player cornerstone for this team.
All right, I like it. Let's flash that graphic here for everybody. So Fernando Mendoza 1, Ruben Bain 2. Ronan, you are up front of the pod. Thanks for being here, man. Welcome in. You are representing the Arizona Cardinals, who officially released Kyler Murray today. And what are you going to do here for the Arizona Cardinals at number 3?
Yes, sir, Simon. Thank you for having me. It's always a blast being on here with you guys. As far as the Cardinals go, there are a number of ways to improve this roster. Initially, before the off season, before everybody started signing everywhere, I wanted to go with Jeremiah Love because I think the Cardinals could potentially emulate the 49ers in the sense of it doesn't necessarily matter how talented your quarterback is. Obviously there has to be some sort of floor to be high, but the Cardinals have a receiver that they can rely on in Marvin Harrison. They have their tight end and Trey McBride. You bring in a running back like Jeremiah Love, that would be a lot of fun. But the right side of this offensive line needs a lot of help. They just brought in Matt Pryor today. I don't think that's gonna do a whole lot. Maybe, a depth piece at most. I'm gonna go with Francis Mauigoa out of Miami, Ruben Bain's teammate. We're gonna go back-to-back Miami Canes here, and improve this offensive line for whatever quarterback that is the quarterback of the future. Hopefully, they have a chance moving forward.
Ben, I'm going to kick this to you for the response here, fellow offensive line enthusiast Ben Parker, Pro Football Enterprises. Thank you for being here. Also, talk to me about Maui Noah being the first tackle taken off the board. I want to hear your thoughts on this. How do you feel about him being the first guy to go?
Yeah, I listen. I'm perfectly fine with it. I really like Mawanoa. I don't think there is a perfect offensive line prospect in this draft. It's kind of you're looking at to me two guys at the top, and you're deciding what fits your team, your scheme, and then even after that, man, I think there's a wide range of opinions on the tackles that come after that. I do think a lot of them are going to go in the first round because people need them and they're not easy to get. But yeah, I'm totally fine with Mawanoa here to the Cardinals.
Rona, I think it's a sound decision. Right tackle is a huge, huge need for the Cardinals, and I think Maui Noah is probably the guy that I probably have the least questions about at the position. I don't you could call it the high floor, low ceiling thing. I don't even think it's necessarily that, but I think I know exactly what we're getting in Maui Noah when he steps into the NFL onto the field. So great pick by you there. Peyton. Oh no, Ben. Ben, you are up next. You have the Tennessee Titans at 4. We're gonna kick it right back to you, man. What are you gonna do for your favorite head coach, Robert Saleh? What are you going over with in the war room with him, and who's the selection gonna be?
We're happy to be picking here. Almost no matter who falls, I'm very happy. So just toss out some names real quick. Arvell Reese, Caleb Downs, Sonny Styles, Carnell Tate. It's the Ohio State club, right? I would be happy for any of those guys here for the Titans. Even David Bailey, with his edge presence. I'm going to go ahead and grab Arvell Reese. I think our coach will know how to use him. I think he'll fit in with our other defensive players. So I like the talent. I'm not obligated to take him first. I'm really close on Caleb Downs here, and I don't think Sonny Styles is far behind, to be honest. But I'll take Arvell Reese for the Titans.
Now, Austin, because you and I just had this conversation the other day about what Reese is going to be best at. Try to project a little bit here for Tennessee. They made a bunch of moves in free agency. Think about they have Jeffrey Simmons, but they get John Franklin Myers, and they add to the DB room in a big, big way. Where would you like to see Arvell Reese go if he went to Tennessee? What part of the field, what position would you like him to be on?
If you're picking him this high, which I think he probably will, I have to see him at edge. And he has to be given a shot to develop. All camp, I've got him just working on pass rush moves, trying to develop a set that he can use and go into a season against NFL caliber linemen and win with rather than just being stronger than everybody like he was in college. So I think if you're picking him this high, you've got to at least try that. but I am absolutely using him in some different packages as a stand-up inside off-ball linebacker. Like that is a skill set that he has, potentially the best or second best in this draft class as just a true off-ball linebacker. So that is not, in my opinion, leaving his game the first year. You're going to try him at defensive end. You have him playing at off-ball linebacker some. If he works at defensive end, great. 2027, full-time DE. But if it doesn't work out great, then you've got a fantastic middle linebacker who can, rotate and play down. He's very versatile, and I think worth an early selection.
And Ben, would that be your plan if you're taking Reese here at 4? Would he be you're trying to get him out on the edge as much as possible right away, or are you easing him to that, starting him at linebacker a little bit?
Well, he's going to play on the line for me. He's going to be on the line, but I'm easing him into this pass rush thing. He is so good at just blowing up the run. And I mean, not just the run game itself, but at working his way out there to the boundary level and blowing up screens. He does an excellent job of that. So I want him to feel at home and very comfortable chasing down everything. And then, it's going to take him a while. I don't even expect first season he'll be able to develop enough pass rush moves to be great at it, but the potential is certainly there. It's really just that overall athleticism. To be honest, there's a little bit of concern for me that he may not ever reach his top end ceiling because of the lack of pass rush moves. But the athleticism is that good and his ability to blow up the run game. I still feel good, especially when I've got Robert Saleh working with him, who I do trust on the defensive side of things. I think Saleh will figure out a way to put him to good use. So
Yeah, I think the solid component is a big deal there. All right, thank you, Ben. Peyton, you are actually up this time. You are picking number 5 overall for the New York Football Giants. I know John Harbaugh is completely in charge, and he just let you write the name down on the card. Joe Shane is locked in a closet somewhere. What are you and the Giants doing at 5? Welcome in, Two Peas on a Pod. Peyton Davila is here. Thank you, Peyton.
Yeah, Joe Shane is currently banging on the door through like the little tiny window that they used to have in the school hallways, and it's just got a piece of paper that says "Draft Love," and we're completely ignoring that. Um, I would say that like of all the outcomes, I think that this is probably the best I've seen the board fall in most mocks for the Giants because I really think that their two top targets are probably going to be Caleb Downs and Sonny Styles. The problem is I didn't prepare to have both available to me at this point. So now it's a really tough call because you have two signings that were made in Tremaine Edmonds and Greg Newsome, right? Newsome is, I believe, what, a 1 year deal?
Hmm.
So it's a little shorter term to improve the secondary. I know he doesn't play safety, but um, then you have Tremaine Edmonds, which I believe was what, a 3 year deal that they signed him
Hmm.
to. So a little bit more long term solution. Granted, Tremaine and Sonny Styles are two very different types of players at those positions. I'm gonna lean towards taking Styles over Downs in this scenario. It's not really anything to do with the like value proposition of safe linebacker over safety. Considering that both these positions in this draft is uniquely tailored to like be a non-premier position draft, especially with two of these outliers in Styles and Downs at their own positions. But at linebacker specifically, the Giants are severely just undermanned outside of Edmonds. Like they really don't have any depth. I know they brought back Micah McFadden, but I don't see that as like any That's simply just depth to me. Um, and that was a real weak point for them, even weaker than what I would say like that some of the secondary was that they had. And I still like Tyler Nubin a little bit to kind of play that safety role, and you still have Javon Holland, who you committed a lot of money to last offseason. So and I know that I don't really love drafting strictly for need. This is just more of the balance of they need help in the middle of the defense, but also Styles, I think, is close enough to the top of my board to where, given the Giants' needs, I think it's fair to go Styles over Downs at this point. So I'm going to go with Sonny Styles.
And I think with the versatility of those linebackers, but also the guys on the defensive line, considering what we just saw Seattle do, we can see a lot of cool, funky fronts and a lot of guys right up on the line of scrimmage and have those guys be versatile. We're gonna reference the Austin Smirk here because this is how I'm choosing a lot of ways that I'm gonna go to some responses. And Austin, I know you love Sonny Styles, man. Talk to me about why you think Sonny Styles would be good for New York.
Crushes me as I'm on the clock soon and just really wanted Sonny Styles because I would get to talk about him more, but at least get to talk about him a little bit. Uh, this New York Giants defense, I was pounding the table saying they're a top three defense in the league last year, and it didn't quite turn out like that. They had some injuries and some down years. With adding Sonny Styles to the middle of this defense, I think they're immediately back in my top three defenses heading into the year. I would not want to face this squad twice a year, and it's already a tough division, but the defense is imposing, and then you add the best tackler in the draft at linebacker. So yeah, it's a great pick.
All right, I'm on the board here. I have the Cleveland Browns at number 6. And I had a plan for the Browns before free agency, and then they went out and obviously get Titus Howard, pay him, get Zion Johnson, pay him, get Owen Jenkins, pay him. So I should do something else, right? No, I'm not going to do that. But I'm going to look at the left side of this offensive line now instead of the right side or the interior. And I'm taking Monroe Freeling, left tackle out of Georgia. Um, this guy has been shooting up my boards with the athleticism and just a little bit of tape that's out there. Um, he reminds me in a couple ways of another Georgia offensive tackle that didn't play a whole lot, and that was Amarius Mims, where you could watch Mims for like 10 snaps and just know like this is gonna work out. This is gonna I don't need to see games played. I don't need to see him do it for two full seasons. I don't need to see even two full quarters. Like the way that guy moves is just different. And Monroe Freeling moves for a 6'7", 315-pound man um, in a way that very few others do. And then especially when you talk about how nimble his feet are and how accurate and decisive he is with his hands, there's so much coordination for a body that size. And for the Browns, who have signed a left guard, a center, a capable right tackle, right guard, but need to rebuild this line from the ground up. I get the idea of going, I could get the first wide receiver off the board here. But I'm not too worried about helping out a quarterback that's not a long-term fit for me anyways. I don't have a long-term quarterback on this roster more than likely. What I do need is a long-term solution on this offensive line to kind of build this out moving forward. So I'm going to take Monroe Freeling here at number 6 for Cleveland. Um, I was too busy talking. I didn't look at anybody's reaction. Does anybody have a big reaction to Monroe Freeling here? Or is everybody cool? Everybody cool? All right, we're going to move to the next pick here. So here's the board. In this dictatorship, nobody gets the opportunity to tell me I made a bad pick. Take that. Box Score Network Mock Draft 2.0. Everyone has made their first selections. Mendoza, Bain, Mauigoa, Reese, Styles, and Freeling are off the board first. Austin, you mentioned it. You are up next. You have the Washington Commanders at number 7. You are overstepping all football people. You are a basketball-minded executive, and you are telling football people what football player to draft. So what is your selection here for the Commanders?
Bam Adebayo. I'm
See, Sunny Styles would have been a great pick. Great high school mixtape for Sunny Styles. That would have made sense.
hmm Okay, so this is an interesting spot. I would have been, as a Commanders fan, I'll keep it PG. I would have been very excited uh had this board fallen this way a couple days ago before free agency news and a couple signings. Odafe Owe, massive signing. Edge is absolutely a crushing need for this team. That doesn't necessarily completely resolve the issue, but that is a very big plug in the league of defensive end. And then the other one that needed help was the defensive backs, and Amik Robertson at corner helps, and then Nick Cross at safety helps. And Nick Cross is still super young. It's a 2-year deal. So before before those two guys signed, I mean, having David Bailey and Caleb Downs on the board would just be a dream, absolute dream. Now I'm like, hey, these two guys are still great, but Carnell Tate's on the board
Mm,
and Makai Lemon's on the board, who I'm very high on
mm.
both of them. And Terry McLaurin's only getting older. I don't really love any of the weapons that they have outside of him. Jeremiah Love's still on the board. I'm not a big Bill Krosky Merritt guy. Austin Eckler tore his Achilles, I think, last year, or his ACL, one of the two. I mean, this is the team who could use some skill players on offense. And they got Chigakonkwo. I like that addition. But this team needs some youth injected at wide receiver. And I think Carnell Tate is a really good apprentice to Terry McLaurin. I really think their skill sets as McLaurin was coming out are similar. Carnell Tate, way better prospect than he was, but similar build skill set as young players. McLaurin's developed his game into a really well-rounded receiver. I think Carnell Tate will do the same thing. So I'm going to go Carnell Tate for the fun of it.
I love that. I love Carnell Tate. I love that Ohio State wide receiver pass down of the torch from McLaurin to Tate. Ben, on your channel, you host a weekly Commander show, so I have to go to you to get your thoughts here. Based on what the Commanders did in free agency, and based on the way this board is, how do you feel about Carnell Tate for the Commanders?
I will say, if we get wide receiver Carnell Tate, we're happy because the offense could use the infusion. Jaden Daniels, when he played, and this was pre-injury at the start of the season, did not look good. Let's be honest. This was before the injury. He did not look anything like, what you expected coming off the magic of his rookie year. And so getting him somebody else to throw to would help. Whether McLaurin is there for, 2, 3 years or whether he's there for one more season, that certainly would help. So I don't think anybody's going to be disappointed if Carnell Tate shows up on this draft board.
All right. Ronan, you are back on the clock, my friend. You have the New Orleans Saints at number 8 overall. What are you going to do here for New Orleans?
New Orleans, they've done a number of things to kind of help out their roster. Bringing in guard David Edwards was a great move. I think they've set themselves up to go a couple of different ways, and they can really make an impact here. Well, I'm gonna help out Tyler Shugg a little bit, and I'm gonna go with Makai Lemon out of USC. He's a slot guy, he can play anywhere, but he should be a slot guy because he can do a lot of work there. He's a rack threat, but he's also a great 50-50 guy. So I'm going to bring in Lemon. The wide receiver room in New Orleans is pretty grim, and outside, or at least outside of Olave. And Olave, as we all know, he's had injury history to say the least. So bring in another wide receiver in there to help out your young quarterback.
I love this. I love the idea of getting someone that can truly tilt the field a little bit back towards them, away from Olave. They thought they were going to get that with Shaheed a little bit. Ron, tell me when you had the Saints and you were looking at the board before free agency, how much were you considering, once again, Jeremiah Love, before the Travis Etienne sign? Was that a big thing? Was that a big consideration for you, or were you always kind of looking at wide receiver?
Absolutely. Love was definitely, I want to say, there for a solid 3 or 4 days whenever I was just playing around with different mock drafts. He was in it probably 90% of the time there at New Orleans at 8. So before they brought in Etienne, he was definitely in consideration. I think it's just all about helping out Shaw. As if you can bring in some threats to lessen the load a little bit, help him out. I think ultimately that's going to help with best.
All right. So there's our top 8. We mentioned the top 6 already, and then the wide receivers go Tate and Lemon back to back. Are we going to get a run on wide receivers moving forward? Ben, you are up. You have the Chiefs, the first pick of the Chiefs here. They have 2 selections in this draft, and the one in the top 10 is actually their own for the first time in a very long time. So this is kind of a monumental pick. This is a situation they haven't been in. There's a lot of talk about do they go for the fit for 2026, or do they, go for something that they might not have the chance to do again, maybe with an eye more to the long term? So that's the preamble for Kansas City. What are you going to do here for the Chiefs at 9?
So unusual to even think about Kansas City picking top 10 as one of their picks, like legit, right? Like you just said. But here we are. David Bailey sitting here. We'll go ahead and take him. I do have some concerns about limitations and how much playing time he may get, but I don't have any concerns about him getting to the quarterback. And we just haven't had an edge rusher who can legit get to the quarterback on his own in a long time. So, Chris Jones at some point is going to age out. I think that process has already started, but, Chris Jones can be there for as long as he wants to now that we've already inked the deal. So we may as well add somebody who can get the quarterback off the edge, and David Bailey is the guy to do that for us.
And that selection kind of screams what I'm talking about here, right? Where the thing for 2026 is the offense needs to get more explosive. Now, maybe to Kansas City, adding Ken Walker in free agency, they did that. Maybe that's enough of the check mark that lets them do whatever kind of falls to them in the draft. And, this is a guy that consensus probably top 5 pick, but hey, this is why we do mocks. You never know who's going to slide, what's going to happen. And if Bailey is in there for Kansas City for a team that has not had a consistent pass rush or pass rusher in a long time, and you've got a defense that is losing players in free agency at the rate that they're losing them. You're talking about starting corners, Leo Chenal, who's kind of their like blitz pseudo end linebacker. You're talking a lot of names changing over. If you can get one of these explosive edge rushers, who's a little bit versatile, but certainly can get after the quarterback, I think that's a move that, even if it's not the thing they technically need the most for right now, at least in our eyes at this point, that's a pick that is something that can be, identifying for their defense for the next 4 or 5 years. Um, I'm up next with the Cincinnati Bengals, and this is an easy selection for me. I was a little worried about what was going to happen for the Bengals here. I think 10 could be a tricky spot for them. But as we just kind of mentioned with Ben and Bailey kind of sliding down, Caleb Downs slides down here for the Bengals, and they need a complete culture reset on the defense, even more than players, because they've taken plenty of swings on players. This is coming down to a culture and play style kind of situation for them. And yeah, I could go, I could try to, get Peter Woods to reclaim kind of what he was supposed to be this season. We could go for an athletic, or kick butt edge rusher in Falk or Mesidor. Um, but Downs is a guy that, even though, just signed a safety in free agency, culture, mentality, gonna run and hit. So you're talking about the biggest issue for the Bengals is coming down, running and hitting from any position, and he's going to do it even from the safety spot. So Caleb Downs is going to be a top 10 pick in this mock, and I imagine he will be in April's draft as well. But the Bengals are going to be ecstatic to have him. Austin, we are back to you with the Miami Dolphins under new management, under a new coach, under a new quarterback. Malik Willis is now the quarterback for the Miami Dolphins. Austin, what are you going to do here with this first pick for this new regime in Miami?
Caleb Downs would have been really nice if he would have fallen here. Uh, with that being out the door, I think I would be shopping this pick around with the current board and how it's fallen. Um, so while I kind of talk over my next few steps, if anybody wants to jump in real quick with one, let me know. But I'm looking at a few different things. That you've obviously got the new signing of the quarterback and Malik coming in with a 3-year deal. So I want to put some focus into him and how are we going to make him succeed here, because he is a player who doesn't have much experience, and we need to try and give him as much ability to develop as we can. So I'm looking at, we already have a great running back, we already have a great wide receiver, but a second wide receiver would be nice. I think the other place I'm looking is on the interior offensive line to just really shore up that protection, because that is an area of weakness for this team. Defensively, it's really rough, like super, super duper rough. And if there was a great player here, I would jump all over it. I do like Mansour Delane. I'm not ruling that pick out yet as I kind of talk through it. And Keldrick Falk is nice, but I'm not quite high enough on him yet to make that selection at this point in the draft. So if no one wants to trade for it, the question is, do I want to go talent at a skill position, add some receiver depth because there is one more receiver who I think is belongs in this area of the draft in Jordan Tyson, or do I want to go with the Penn State interior offensive lineman and however you say his name, Ion, I don't
Big
know.
Ioane.
Ioane. Ioane.
Ioane.
You gonna do?
I'm gonna go we'll go I spoiled myself and took the player for my last team, so I'll eat my vegetables here in Miami. And I'll shore up that protection for Malik Willis. He's a running quarterback, and Ione is a beast, an absolute mauler on the inside. So yeah, I'm gonna go there.
Um, I love it. I love Vega. They clearly Miami has always had an issue with offensive line. Um, as I get older, I as I get older, I lean more and like I don't want to move guys' positions if I don't have to. Is and this is a very niche question. Who is getting the nod to get to play their spot at left guard? Is it going to be Big Jonah from Arizona, who the old regime traded up for last year, playing left guard? Or is Vega going to get his position as the team's first round pick? Or is it going to be Vega, you're a first round pick for a reason. We're going to try you at right guard. We're going to try to change your position. How would you do that?
Um, so I think with them switching to a right-handed quarterback, I would I would keep Vega at left guard. And I think it kind of the offense is kind of mirroring, so I feel like switching
Hmm.
from left guard to right guard is not going to be that much of a difference. I mean, it is, but the fact that the handedness of the quarterback changes, I think makes that transition a little bit easier, and it's almost less of a transition for the current regime.
I also just like the idea of like Jonah, if he's on the right side, him and Austin Jackson are both just kind of maulers. Like they're not that
Yeah.
technically sound, but they're both, and so you can call runs to that side and just let them push dudes around. And then Ione is a little more athletic, like Logan, like Patrick Paul is on the left side, so you can kind of lean into that with like maybe some of your more wide zone stuff on that side. So I think that's a good call. I like that. Um, Peyton, you were up next. You were feverishly in the DMs here trying to trade around with this pick, I think. What's going on with Dallas? Are we sweating over there? Is Rashawn Gary cold feet happening? Can you still cancel that trade? How are you feeling about Dallas and what's happening here at 12?
No, nothing like that. I was actually trying to call the Chiefs to see if I could move up ahead of the Bengals to try and actually trade up for Caleb Downs.
Yeah.
Funny enough, which I know that sounds crazy, trading up for a safety, but Caleb Downs, much like I do want to kind of like throw out a little bit of a conversation point because this pick and the previous pick with the Dolphins, um, the fact that at least my number one player on my board, many people's number one player or like top three player on their boards, Jeremiah Love is still not taken. I was curious as to like given the way this board has fallen, this is not that crazy of a real life scenario. What do you think the realistic market is for teams to kind of target these two picks if this is how the board falls for Jeremiah Love? Like we don't see trade ups for running back really ever. And I was wondering what you guys thought about that proposition.
Quickly, yeah, I did want to say this is the way free agency has gone down, I think is telling us how people feel about the idea of taking Jeremiah Love in the first round, talent aside. Um, who were the teams that as people were trying to convince us, okay, he'll be a top 10 pick, right? He'll be a top 10 pick. Who were the teams that were slated to do that? The Saints and the Chiefs. Well, they just signed big money running backs. The Cardinals. Whoa, he could get into the top five. The Cardinals signed Tyler Algier. Now, Algier is not going to stop someone necessarily, but like that was a real contract. So I think
Yeah.
that tells us something. Um, Sneaky, the Bucks at 15, right? Well, okay, Kenny Gainwell, are they going to pay Gain? And like again, he's not making a ton of money, 7 million bucks, but are these teams insulating themselves? The Vikings bringing back Aaron Jones today, right? Restructuring his deal instead of an outright release. Um, I'm like, a lot of these teams are kind of telling us the quiet part out loud and saying we don't want to, we want to like don't put the cookies in the shopping cart, right? Keep them at the grocery store. We got food at home. I'll have a yogurt, right?
Yeah.
I don't tempt me. So if I have a running back I'm paying 7 million bucks to, I can't in good conscience go in the draft and spend a first round pick on one as well.
Yeah.
I'm there with you. I
Now,
think the board is accurately describing life right now.
counterpoint, one thing I actually heard that was kind of like both things, not both things can be true because they can't be, but like some people are also reading the tea leaves of all these as in teams like the Saints and the Chiefs are signing these running backs because they're getting feedback that he's not going to make it past seven. So
Yeah.
I've heard
Okay.
kind of both points where it's like there's so much smoke around Tennessee or Washington being the team that's going to end up taking Love that there's just no point in them waiting to try and find out until draft night and then be left empty-handed at the running back position. Anyways, all that to say, I'm not taking Jeremiah Love for the Cowboys. They just signed Javonte Williams, so I don't
Great.
want to
Thanks for
get us
wasting
too
our
far
time.
off the
Appreciate
tracks.
it.
Yeah, sorry. I'm actually going to go, despite the Cowboys probably not being willing to do this because they just drafted a cornerback last year that was coming off an ACL in the second round, who I loved a lot, in Savon Ravel. I'm going to take Jamal McCoy. He's my number one corner on the board.
Jesus.
And yes, coming off a torn ACL,
Channeling Jerry Jones like no other.
I
My
still think
God.
that like which we had this conversation between you and me, Simon, whenever we went over my big board. He's my number one corner on my board despite the ACL. Like I still think that his 2024 tape holds up over time, and it doesn't seem like coming out of the combine that there were that many concerns medically with him. Seems like everything's fine, everything's clean. So I'm going to take him here for the Cowboys in a position of desperate need, considering that they need to heavily improve on the outside. So
Did you say the combine where he did no athletic testing, everyone's coming out saying athletically and physically he looks fine?
yeah, I just mean
Okay,
like
I
no
just wanted
medical
I
like
just wanted
super
I just
big
wanted to
red
make
flags.
sure.
That's all I'm saying.
Right. Yeah, no, not a single red flag has been had. Um oh boy. Well, Ronan, let me throw it to you here because you're a Rams fan. You're gonna be on the clock here for the Rams in a minute. There was a long stretch of time where it was the Rams had two first round picks. The Rams really needed DB help. Um, so I'm sure you did lots of thinking and soul searching about some of these DBs in the draft for your own personal reasons. What do you think about the Cowboys taking a swing on Jermon McCoy? Obviously, there's the high ceiling of talent, but the high risk of the injury. But him being the first corner off the board here to Dallas, what do you think of that pick? And then go ahead and give us your pick for the Rams at 13.
McCoy was a player that, honestly, with the Rams at 13 before they got McDuffie, he was someone that I was really eyeing up. I expected potentially for the Rams to get, but that was also, pre-combine. I was assuming McCoy would do something at the combine, and we didn't get really anything. So hopefully at the pro day, we get some answers as far as what he's able to do on the field. Because last time we saw him, he was phenomenal. And very well could be the CB1 in this class, but he didn't play at all last year, and it's been I think 18 months since he got hurt, and he's still not out on the field showing us what he can do, and that might make teams a little bit nervous. So I understand from a ceiling aspect going McCoy here. Delane is a heck of a prospect though, and personally I might go Delane over McCoy, but I cannot hate on going McCoy over Delane here. And that might just be because before the combine, I was sitting there kind of mentally preparing to convince myself that McCoy was better than Delane already. Um, so with that being said, we'll go ahead and jump right into the Rams pick here, 13. And with Delane here on the board, wouldn't that be funny if the Rams just went ahead and said, screw it, let's add three corners worth of salt to the secondary and just completely revamp the whole thing. I think that would be an interesting route because then you could play with the idea of McDuffie in the slot. It makes you kind of question what you do with Quentin Lake, who just got an extension, because that's him being in that nickel position is kind of where he's best. So I don't think that's where we're going to go, even though that would be fun to have a couple toys to play with there in the secondary to go with that defensive line. I think ultimately we're going to go ahead and get Matthew Stafford, his wide receiver three, in this, potential last hurrah. Yeah, I assume this is the last one in Jordan Tyson. But I do want to note, I don't. It's the Rams, right? F them picks, all that. I'm not sure if the Rams will stick here at 13. And there's a scenario that I wanted to run by all of you. I'll probably kick it to you, Simon. But what do you think of the idea of the Rams trading 13 and Byron Young, who is entering the last year of his deal? The Rams are about to have to pay a lot of players, and Steve Avila, Puka Nacua, Jared Verse, right, Braden Fisk if they want to extend him as well. So there are a lot of guys who are going to be due. What are your thoughts on potentially moving 13 and Jared Verse and trying to get one of those premier pass rushers? Let's say Ruben Bain falls, or if the Rams like David Bailey, and kind of resetting that edge rush room a little bit, and financially.
Would this be was it for Young or for Verse? Because that's two very different answers, I think.
I'm sorry, for Byron Young. For Byron Young.
Okay. I was like, no. I still don't even think I would do it because I
Yeah,
think
my apologies, Byron Young.
I think last year was proof of concept that this team, as presently constructed, can win a Super Bowl. And I know you add all the DBs, but I want that to be purely additive. Um, I'm not worried about the contracts of the future because we're going to be on a rookie quarterback timeline sooner rather than later. Um, I can restructure things. I can move things around to where I'm going to be able to take care of who I need to take care of at any point. There's if you take Jordan Tyson here at 13, like that's your future wide receiver too, and he's on a rookie contract, right? So you're I'm not hurting anywhere at this point. Like you said, you're gonna have to pay the offensive lineman, but even like, are you gonna have to? Do you have big money tackles? You're gonna have to pay at some point. Like probably not. So you're saving a little bit there. Um, no, I don't think I'd move up. I'd keep this team as presently constructed and just keep this 13 pick as kind of a gift. Does anybody feel differently? Would anybody here want to see the Rams be like ultra aggressive and take 13 and a player that they're gonna have to pay and try to go up for somebody else?
Yeah, I would make that trade. I wouldn't hesitate on that because of the money. Listen, I know everybody that wants to, if they have an owner, can play the dead cap restructure game, but not everybody can and wants to do that. And, like Roland said, when you've got that many guys coming up that you have to pay, why not go ahead and get something out of one of the lower tiered guys that you would really rather not pay? I think that's a smart move.
And I guess here, I mean, especially with the way this board fell, right? Like Bailey's there at 9. Like who knows if it would really even take that? Like it might not. Like maybe the Chiefs would. I mean, they probably again would anybody trade off the Bailey? But in this scenario where some of these edge rushers are falling a bit, like maybe it wouldn't even take that much. But it is an interesting idea of taking the
Yeah.
player along with the pick and trying to make that move. Ben, you are up. You've been sitting strong at 14 for weeks. But the team you have represented has changed several times. What are you gonna do here for Baltimore at 14? Because it is
Tentatively
in fact
for
the Baltimore.
Baltimore.
Yeah.
Tentatively.
Who knows? Maybe they have to send it for Trey Hendrickson or something. I don't know what all is gonna. Maybe they have to trade it to the Raiders at the end because they want Linderbaum instead. Actually, so they just I don't know what's gonna happen. But for now, for tonight, the Ravens have the 14th pick. You are in charge, and who are you gonna take?
I just want everybody to know free agency and this draft has worked out exactly as we planned and exactly as we expected all along. Okay. All kidding aside, let's take tight end Kenyon Sadiq out of Oregon. I was wanting to grab one of the wide receivers out of this draft, which would include Carnell Tate. It would include Jordan Tyson. But those two guys aren't sitting there. So I want a flexible guy with Kenyon Sadiq, athletic. The Ravens have been looking for pass catchers for Lamar for a long time now. And they've been pretty good here in free agency at getting after some other guys. They've lost a bunch of guys. It's going to be a different looking kind of a team. But I want to keep trying to get Lamar somebody to work with. So Kenyon Sadiq out of Oregon.
Peyton, I want to throw it to you as one of our two fantasy obsessive people on the show. How mad would dynasty tight end owners around the world be that Isaiah Likely is finally freed and he's on his way to prosper as tight end 1 for the Giants, And now in comes the next best young tight end prospect, and he's immediately just going to slot back in as tight end two for the Ravens. How anti-Ravens are all tight end premium owners out there now if Sadiq just takes likely spot right after he leaves?
Pretty disappointed, all things considered, probably the other outcomes. You look at the other likely destinations for Sadiq being, I mean, you've heard Denver probably thrown out there a lot towards the end of the first round. Minnesota's been brought up, but they kind of restructured Hawkins' deal, so maybe not there. Possibly somewhere like Carolina, where there's not really anybody of consequence that's going to prevent them from drafting him. The thing I would be encouraged by if this is where Baltimore ends up is that Minter comes from, the Chargers where they had I don't want to say a guy that was very similarly built, but Oronda Gadsden isn't that different of a prospect, athletically speaking, at the tight end position as Sadiq is, just as far as, being more built like a receiver than your typical tight ends from an athletic standpoint. So I wonder if he ends up in Baltimore, if it actually ends up playing out more that he's just a big slot type of utilized player with Mark Andrews already there, and that his fantasy production isn't actually that capped by it. Like I think that likely yes does have athletic ability, but it's nothing like Sadiq does. It's totally different worlds as far as the type of athletes they are. So I actually don't hate the idea of it, considering that, like Ben said, they would have opted for one of the wide receivers if they were there. But if you're looking for additional pass catchers who are going to be, a problem from a mismatch standpoint and be able to be relied upon as like a high volume pass catcher at that, like Sadiq is probably going to be able to do that for them.
I love that he's also a better blocker than likely. So like ideally they could do the 12 personnel, like he's
Yeah.
attached at the line and blocking more. Uh and likely we want it to be flexed out, but Sadiq is actually athletic enough to do that. So and there you go, everybody. That's the inside of the brain of a fantasy obsessive person because he immediately talked himself into it for a while it worked. And in week 3, he'll be disappointed when Sadiq runs like 6 routes and gets 1 target. Uh, I'm on the clock here with 15 for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, and I threw everyone off the scent. I'm taking Jeremiah Love, running back out of Notre Dame. Um, the Bucks just watched Mike Evans leave the building because he no longer believed in their offense enough to win a Super Bowl, and that's got to sting. It's got to be pretty upsetting. And I'm looking at my offense if I'm Tampa Bay, and I'm looking at my defense, and I'm like, I invested a lot in the DBs last draft. Um, the front has more questions than answers. There's some guys I like here that would be good fits for Tampa, and some guys that have the upside Tampa would need on the defensive side of the ball right now. But when I look at how this team can try and compete and get to a Super Bowl, there's a offense changing player on the board and not a defense changing player, especially considering the Bucks, when healthy, have one of the best offensive lines in the league. And we're entering an era where it's not your father's offensive lines anymore. The Lions aren't who they were. The Browns aren't who they were. Um, the Bucks are one of the best offensive lines in the league when they're healthy and they believe in the running game. And if I plug in all-purpose explosive back, yeah, I have Gainwell, yeah, I have Bucky Irving. Listen, I'm not making decisions based on those guys. I'm sitting here at 15. I can change my offense. There's not a receiver I can get to do that. There's not a tight end I can get to do that. I don't need an offensive lineman in this crop to do that. I'm going to take Jeremiah Love, and I'm going to try to break down the doors of a top 10 offense again. So I'm going to go with Jeremiah Love here for the Bucks at 15. Um, Austin, you are back on the clock as the general manager for the New York Jets. Here's the board for those at home. David Bailey, Caleb Downs, Ioane, McCoy, Tyson, Sadiq Love. With the second pick of the first round for the New York Jets at 16, how are you going to complement the Ruben Bain selection, Austin?
There are a couple players I like up front still, so that's just like a good note to think of. You could maybe get a good interior guy. I'm a big Caleb Banks guy, so that's an option. In this situation, I'm looking two ways for the Jets. I'm looking purely best player available, who is the highest player on my draft board overall, and taking them, or getting your quarterback of the future in Simpson. You have Geno Smith as a stopgap for a year, but the Jets aren't actually paying him that much. He very well could be just more of a mentor guy for a young Ty Simpson. So, do we want to bring the quarterback in and let Gino sort of be the mentor, or do we want Gino to be a true stopgap for a year and then get somebody in next year's class? So that's sort of the thought. If I go best player available for me, that's just going and taking Mansour Delane. Corner isn't necessarily what I would call a dire need for this team, but a good cornerback in the middle of the draft is absolutely never going to be a problem for any team in the NFL. I don't care who you are. You could always use a good corner in the middle of the first round if he hits. So those are the two I'm bouncing back and forth between right now. I think for the experiment of it, though, let's see how the Jets would look with Ty Simpson at the helm, with Geno Smith kind of giving him as much guidance as he possibly can and competing for the job. I mean, we've seen Geno play at a high level in the last few years. It went really downhill last year. But let's go Ty Simpson, Alabama quarterback, to the Jets at 16.
What do you think, Austin, would be your ideal scenario if this would happen? If you say let's let him compete and see what happens. As the Jets GM, you're the GM tonight. Obviously, if
Mhm.
you're Aaron Glenn, you're like whoever can win 10 games this year wins the job week one and we're good right away. But as the GM, what are you kind of hoping for? Are you like, man, I would love for I'll leave it open ended. I won't give you any answer choices here.
Okay.
What would be best case scenario for you taking Ty Simpson at 16?
I mean, best case scenario is he's a franchise quarterback, right? Like
Right.
that's like he immediately shows up in camp, looks the part, and just wins the job outright. And like, hey, we have our franchise quarterback.
Right.
I think the more realistic high end scenario is that he just flat out beats Geno Smith in camp. It's not world beating. He doesn't look like he's going to be, a runaway rookie of the year or anything like that, but he, clearly outplays Geno in camp and has a strong, stable connection with Garrett Wilson. Like that is absolute best case scenario. And maybe Mason Taylor, he has like a good connection with him as well, and just shows competency. Uh, Maybe best case scenario actually is Geno wins in camp, loses 4 games, Aaron Glenn gets fired. You're able to get a good head coach in the door, and then Ty Simpson plays well. That's actually the most ideal, I think.
Bill Belichick comes back. Um, I mean, I've linked Simpson to the Jets for sure. I mean, Ronan, this was the scenario in our QB predictions pod where Geno goes to the Jets and they get Ty Simpson. I was thinking, maybe 33, but the more I go back and watch Simpson again, like I don't hate someone taking him in the first round, especially if they have a lot of swings. And I do think for New York, it's a sense of we got a guy that can start week one in Geno, and we've seen not super recently, but fairly recently, can give you above average quarterback play. But we also have a guy we can turn to. Aaron, you're talking about Aaron Glenn getting fired. Can he turn to Ty Simpson a week before he gets fired to try and extend his lifeline by a couple weeks or maybe even another season if things turn around quickly and go well? So I definitely get that game plan. And listen, they have an offensive line, they have a weapon. They're trying to put together a like stopgap, competent defense. Wouldn't be the worst situation in the world. And there is a lot that I do like about Simpson. Um, Ronan, you are on the clock here. You look very confident with the Detroit Lions at 17. The times are changing for Detroit. What are you going to do here? And a pretty pivotal pick for them here, I think, at 17.
They are, it is. It really is. And Simon, this offensive line has kind of gone under construction this offseason. And I think here at 17, we're going to continue to try and improve it, try and rebuild it for the future. And we're going to go with right tackle out of Utah, Spencer Fano. Now, the whole talk out of the combine was his arm length. Is he a T-Rex? Is he not? To be determined, right? The thing with Fano is he's so dang explosive, and it kind of makes up for it. Now, if you put him at guard, he'd be a heck of a guard. And here at 17, you're not giving up, a ton of premium capital, where even if you do kick him at guard, I think you can absolutely justify it. Uh, this dude is an absolute tank. And he's a great mover, and he just screams lion. He screams Dan Campbell
Yes.
offense.
Hmm.
If he's out at tackle, he's scoring 2 touchdowns. Like, book it, the dude is scoring 2 touchdowns in the next 2 years if he's a lion. Now, does that mean that Penei Sewell goes and plays left tackle? Do you try Fano at left tackle? Those are all kind of questions that you got to work the kinks out. But I think if you throw Fano in that room, he's absolutely going to be one of your best five.
You hit the most important question, and how do you move these guys around? But my response you also hit, which was he's just a Dan Campbell guy. Like the Lions, they have a lot of options for what they do moving forward with their line. But this is one of those teams that's going to want to build their line through the draft primarily. They go sign Cade Mays to $8 million a season to kind of be the center, be the linchpin. Um, but everybody else is a draft pick, and wherever you end up putting Fano, um, he's going to compete and he's going to push whoever else is kind of in that room going for that spot wherever you want to put him. He's athletic enough to play left tackle. He can switch. Yeah, I think he can switch sides. I think he's athletic enough to do it. Are his arm, the arm length and blah blah blah, whatever. Um, but yeah, Penei Sewell, very much like Tristan Wirfs, just like athletic enough to be an All-Pro right tackle right away, and I could easily see him moving to left. So you can get either of those guys to play either tackle spots. I think they have two guards that are interesting, but still kind of projections and developing. So if Fano ends up beating one of them for guard, then you've gotten better, and you've gotten a Dan Campbell guy, you've gotten a Detroit Lion guy. So I love this pick. I think this is great work. And listen, Cade Mays like only $8 million. If Fano becomes your center, after a year or two, um, there are people that think he could be a great center as well. So I love this. I don't think you can go wrong with this for Detroit. Peyton, you are on the clock. You have your Minnesota Vikings at 18. Uh, Also, if you do the thing I think you might do right now, I'm gonna call in the latest conspiracy theory to the NFL league office. So go ahead and make your selection and let's see if you lose your next draft pick.
Um, oh man. Well, here's the thing. I'm between two players, both secondary guys. The question is, for this
We wanted
specific
both of
mock,
them anyways. We were gonna do it all along. Yeah, you.
the question is, do I want the player that's better for like this kind of content, or do I want like just BPA? Um, Honestly, I kind of want to do this is see. I want you to cut the free, considering that we are both Vikings fans. It just happens that I'm picking for them. Um, I'm going to be passing the torch of elite white safety play from Harrison
Jesus.
Smith to Dylan Thieneman. And we are going to carry on the tradition here in Minnesota by taking safety Dylan Thieneman out of Oregon.
Freed, the floor is yours.
I said I was going to keep it PG earlier, and it's tough. But I'm gonna.
We can get to PG-13. I think we get like one curse word and we can stay in PG-13. I think that's how the cinema does it.
Let's just say the camera doesn't need to go any lower.
Oh, Lordy.
Um,
Okay. Take that back, what I just said.
no, this is a great pick. Obviously, Mansour Lane on the board it's really tough to pass
Yeah,
that up,
yeah,
like super tough. I don't think it's going to happen. Like something here has gone askew for him to make it here this far, I think.
yeah,
Uh,
yeah.
but if he's on the board, that's really tough to pass up. But assuming he's not on the board and everything else is the same, I'm really hoping Dylan Thieneman is a Minnesota Viking. And it's not just, the Harrison uh, comparisons. The dude flew up my draft board on my second watch of him. He is a first round talent at safety through and through. So I love the pick. I think he's going to be a great weapon in this defense, and I would be excited to see how Brian Flores would use him.
I think that my preference for Thieneman over Delane is just because I kind of have a bit more confidence in like the corners that are left on day two versus some of the safeties that are left on day two, and I think that like after Downs and Thieneman, I think that's kind of like there's two guys in that tier, and that's it. And then you get to that next tier of like Neil Warren and like for me AJ Halsey, but like I think that Thieneman, especially after the way he tested, is a different kind of safety than we thought he probably was before then. So, yeah, that was kind of like the big reason for me going safety over corner with this pick.
Peyton, what would his role like? How can you succinctly tell me what his role in this defense would be?
It
Because I know he was drawing like the hype pre-combine was like, okay, what Eamon Wari did, Thieneman can do, and he tested well, but much small, not much smaller. Like he's small, like he's still a good size for a safety. But Eamon Wari was a freak, being 6'3", over 6'3", 220 pounds, and still testing 98th percentile of everything. Thieneman is 6 foot, 205, and testing 90th to 92nd percentile and everything. So that's a big difference. So if he's not Eamon Wari, because it's unfair to try and say someone's Eamon Wari, what is he for Minnesota?
he's definitely going to be reserved to actually playing back in coverage and like more home base at safety more often than not. I don't expect him to like play up, in the box. Granted, he is like, I think he's really solid in run support for like what he did at Oregon. But I do see him kind of playing more of a I don't want to say traditional like coverage role but Harrison Smith a lot of time like he was good in run support, but I'm not trying to make the direct comparison to him, but there's a lot of similarities between like the way that they play, in my opinion, that it does seem to be a similar role that he's going to fill, considering that given and here's the other thing is that like given that the Vikings have been willing to kind of piece it together at corner, it seems like they want it seems like they want those safeties to be a known quantity in Josh Metellus and that Harrison Smith type of prototypes at those positions, that I could see this being where they would go over those. And anyways, to answer your question, I do see it being similar to Harrison Smith. The problem is that he's going to need a little bit more refining when it comes to like developing routes down the field. Like I think he's going to need pains as far as coverage goes, but I think he's talented enough to get better at it as he goes.
To sum it up, that succinct description that you gave us, free safety that can come up and hit. Thanks, baby.
Yeah, that was not really a succinct description in true Peyton fashion, but you got the point. It's very much all over the
man,
place.
that's fantastic. Ben, the man of few words. I always can count on you. See, if you don't listen to my show, you know Ben and I do 2.5 hour long podcasts. That's why that's funny for everybody else here. Ben, you got the Panthers at 19. What are you going to do? You spent a bunch of money in free agency. So now what's the draft plan?
We'll take Mansour Delane, cornerback out of LSU. We're happy to have him. Really good player, so let's add him in, and let's keep working on that defense.
Okay, great. Moving on. One from one cat to another. I don't know. I wanted something quippy, but Ben was too fast for me. I really couldn't even get there. At risk of derailing things, Peyton, you're back on the clock at 20 for the Dallas Cowboys. You want to trade the pick to Ben? What are you going to do here for Dallas?
I'll keep this one a lot shorter. I think this is clearly where I'm going to go in the edge direction of like these second tier edge guys. If I'm the Cowboys, I think I'm going to lean towards Akeem Mesidor in this spot, mostly because of the window that they're currently in from a roster standpoint. I think that Mesidor is more of a ready-made, out-of-the-box product to step in and immediately contribute, versus a guy like Keldrick Falk, where he's going to take a lot of time to develop as a player, even though he does have insane tools and crazy athleticism. Mesidor, I think, is going to be more in line with the timeline that the Cowboys have, given that they are still, even if it might not seem like it, they really are in a win now window in in many ways, even if the defense is going to need a lot of help, which, I mean, between Jamal McCoy and Messidorf, both those guys, given them McCoy's ready day one, both those guys are going to step in and be immediate contributors and take this defense's floor from, top, bottom five to at least average.
For the bit, I moved past the Panthers. I do actually want to come back to Ben and do that. Panthers fans are just screaming right now to not have any conversation. And I will come back to Peyton and the Cowboys. But Ben, Mansour Delane, getting down here at 19. You and I have had conversations about, okay, when is a first round corner worth it? And, so down here at 19, does that math kind of change rather than taking the guy top 10? How good do you think Delane can be? Like, you already have J.C. Horn, who is very good. I don't think he's in that elite tier. I don't even know if he's like half a tier down, but maybe true second tier kind of outside corner, but he's getting paid highly. Is that Delane's ceiling? Is he a step down from that? And it's not a big deal because it's the back half of the first round. I agree. I think this is a great pick because, Mike Jackson played well for them last year, but he's a little older. You invested heavy in the front free agency on the offense through last year, the last several drafts. Reportedly are also bringing in Luke Fortner to play center. I don't know if you want to give us a little note on that, Ben. He played pretty well for New Orleans last season. But how good can Mansour Delane be, and is he a guy that can eventually be this team's CB1? Are you going to be moving on from J.C. Horn at some point, or is this just he's just the highest player on our board, and we're not worried about the financials or the ramifications down the line? We're just getting a good player.
It was definitely a best player thing. That was the driving force behind this. Best player on the board out of what's still sitting here. So that was the driving force. Now, it's a great point about Mike Jackson and J.C. Horn. Both, when they're on the field, is fine. But you've got Horn. You mentioned the age, not the age, but the injury thing with J.C. Horn has been a problem. So if at some point we don't want to pay for a guy who's not going to be on the field, if that continues to be a problem, then Mansour Delane is there. There's no problem with having three of these guys and bumping one of them to nickel. We'll figure out which one. I don't have a problem doing that. Austin mentioned it earlier. No matter what team you are, when you have a guy as good as Delane, you're sitting middle first round. There's never a reason to not draft a guy like that, hardly. So I did consider, there was another player on the board that I do like, that I did consider since we do have Jackson and Horn. I was a 50-50 on it, but ultimately I didn't want to give up Mansour Delane.
I think it's a great pick because this is a team that was a little bit ahead of schedule last year making the playoffs, right? And you think about what you need in the playoffs, and you need offensive line, which they, do invest in and do well at. Fortner kind of coming in and being that other maybe starting center, but other interior player with Cade Mays going just kind of proves that you can never have too many corners. And for me, Delane is a high prospect on my board. Going to Peyton and the Cowboys, Akeem Mesidor, I think the most important thing also is he's just a butt kicker. Like you talk about, I was considering him for the Bengals at 10 just because that mentality that he's gonna bring, like the way he attacks every single rep. And I think Dallas is going to need that and love that. And, I was giving you a hard time about McCoy, but like he does the same thing. Like he wants to punch people at the line of scrimmage, and then he wants to hit them when, they're up for the ball and getting their hands on it. So if you get, maybe there's some question marks between injury and age on those guys and what's the development going to be, but that you're going to get competitive dudes when you need to change the mentality of the defense. I do think that is a great pick.
It's like the drafts version, like a draft class version of like an attitude adjustment for a franchise, at least on that side of the ball. So
it's a young NBA team that is trying to get in the playoffs, and they sign like an eighth man.
They sign Isaiah Stewart.
Yeah, to just like, we'll pay you and we'll let you start, and you'll start for like 6 minutes in the first quarter, but you're just going to change the mentality of the way it's the Dylan Brooks. It's the Dylan Brooks effect, which nobody likes him, but there's a reason people keep bouncing him around and people keep paying him. So, all right, everybody, I'm on the board for the Pittsburgh Steelers, and I'm ecstatic here because I am going to go offensive lineman Caleb Lomu out of Utah at left tackle. Broderick Jones has slowly developed in his first few seasons with the Steelers, but he sustained a neck injury towards the end of the 2025 season. He ended up needing neck fusion surgery. Um, and that's a scary thing. That's tough to deal with. There's no timeline on it right now. Um, and he's a player that, because of how questionable it had been for him for a couple of years, you have a new regime, Mike McCarthy coming in. How tied to him are they going to be, right? And when you're kind of looking at the timeline of everything, Ronan was talking about the Rams and guys that they're going to have to pay soon. uh, Tyler Linderbaum's resetting that center market. Zach Frazier's going to need a contract pretty soon, and then Troy Fautana's going to need a contract pretty soon. And you have a whole left guard right now. So how expensive is this line going to get? And do you want to probably have to decline the 5th year option on Broderick Jones? But then that just means the question of extending him is going to come up sooner rather than later. And tackle market for starting tackles isn't cheap. So I'm going to get out in front of this and listen. If Jones comes back and he's healthy and we try him at left guard or something like that, that's great. But Caleb Lomu impressed me in 2025 because in 2024, Ben and I had a long discussion about him where the technique and the athleticism and the mentality were all really interesting. But my biggest question was play strength. Well, he got stronger in 2025. He's knocking dudes down. He's his trap move and chop and just like the way he sends guys to the ground on him is just like, no, I'm big brother now. You're not gonna take me the way you want. So Caleb Lomu is my pick here because maybe he even plays left guard at some point. Um, but for the Steelers who want to build this offensive line out, similar I said about the Lions, want to do it through the draft, Caleb Lomu is going to be my pick here at 21. Um, I haven't opened up the floor for anybody to argue with me about any of my picks. Does anybody want to say anything about the Steelers there? No, great. Forever hold your peace. Ronan, you are up at 22 with the Chargers. So you're hopping across town here, playing both sides in LA. What are you going to do for the Chargers at 22?
Yes, sir. And the interior of this defensive line could use some serious help. I like what they've going on with Mack and Tuipulotu uh, on the edges, but I'd like to potentially beef up that interior. And I think we're going to go. He's a little bit older. I think he's 23, but we're going to go with Florida defensive interior lineman Caleb Banks. And he missed most of last season with a foot injury, so you're kind of basing it off of his year prior tape, but based off of traits, there's a lot to like with this guy. He's he's big as hell. I mean, but he's not, he's lean. He's twitchy. We're gonna roll with Banks here with the Chargers at 22.
I love this because the biggest question on Banks is coming off of that injury, but he muscled through it and he played at the end of last season, which was huge. And he comes and he performs at the Senior Bowl, he performs at the Combine, not as much or to the extent in some ways that everybody wanted, but just showing that he was willing and healthy enough to do those things, I think was really impressive. And you talk about like the mentality and the some of the personality concerns and what he's going to need. That's a veteran room when you talk about a guy like Khalil Mack is there and Harbaugh being there, um, and the stable defensive coaches that they keep bringing in, going and getting somebody that's been on Harbaugh's staff for a long time, but was just been down in college for a year. Um, I think this is a good situation for him. Rona, did you weigh heavily Banks versus Woods, Peter Woods out of Clemson, or was Banks kind of the easy pick for you?
I did down to the wire, and you can. I don't know. I guess it's based up to preference. Woods, there's a lot to like there as well, and with him being only 21, maybe there's 2 extra years for him to grow into a better player than Banks. But ultimately, I think the measurables are a little bit more favorable with Banks. And whenever you're talking about, defensive interior line, aside from Aaron Donald, who's kind of an anomaly, you kind of got to take notice to those traits.
Yeah, it feels like you have a shorter place to fall to with Banks, at least having that size, maybe being a little bit of a plugger if he doesn't reach that ceiling, as opposed to Woods, who's going the wrong way, getting smaller. Austin, you are up. You are at 23 for the Philadelphia Eagles. How are you going to swing the culture and the vibes there in Philadelphia?
Well, there's a fit, a really, really a big Howie fit, and there's one key aspect of it that really make it not the absolute perfect fit. and it kind of unfortunately is that he didn't go to Georgia. But you know how he loves him some SEC, real Southern freak athletes on his defense, and Keldrick Falk is on the board, and that's going to be the pick here. If he went to Georgia, I think Howie would be drooling over this pick. But an Auburn player, it's probably more of a casual, hey, let's just do it. Keldrick Falk is one of the most raw edge prospects in this year's draft. He has insane measurables and tools, and he is extremely young. He won't turn 21 until after the NFL season actually starts. So, a young, just elite tools guy who does have a couple of veterans will be able to help him develop, and a great organization and team to develop. I think this is a prime spot for Keldrick Falk to go.
Yeah, and I mean they lose Jalen Phillips in free agency. A lot of their edge room is out there as unrestricted free agents now, and this feels like there is a window there where Hunt and Smith are both still under contract where they can have the time to develop this guy a little bit. This isn't going to be a he has to play right away. And whatever they do with Jalen Carter, like they still have some depth on that defensive line. So it's not going to be a situation where they're counting on him for too much and they have a little bit of a runway and everyone's just going to like throw their hands up and be like, oh, of course, the 6'6", 270-pound young athletic freak is falling to Howie Roseman. I think that makes a lot of sense as the pick I could see happening. I'm up next with the Cleveland Browns at 24. And I will say for Cleveland, if anybody's looking to come up and get somebody, let me know. My line is open, but I'm very enticed by looking at a right tackle. There's some right tackles here where this would technically be a little bit early. And yes, I have Titus Howard, who I actually do like better at tackle than guard. But if I can have all five of my starters on the line solidified, I'd feel good about that. Um, I'm also in a situation for Cleveland where I need a receiver, and I do think wide receiver four is coming off the board a little later than I expected. But again, that's it. That situation of are any of these receivers changing my life right now? I don't know. Um, but I'm certainly leaning offense. I'm certainly leaning either right tackle or wide receiver. Going once, going twice. If anybody wants to come up for 24. Peyton's looking tough, but I think we're sitting here. Are you coming up, Peyton? Nope. Okay. So I'm going to go ahead and just take the next wide receiver on my board. I'm going to take Omar Cooper Jr. out of Indiana because I know this guy's going to get open. He's going to get open against man or zone, and he's going to have strong, dependable hands. Maybe from a wide receiver position, right? Outside, inside, Z, that whole thing. Maybe there's a little overlap with Jerry Jeudy, but I'm not going to make decisions based on Jerry Jeudy. But I'm going to get a receiver that I know is going to get open. I know understands the nuances of the game, blocks a little bit even for his size. And I'm going to probably plan to stick him in the slot pretty early in his career and just say, I need this guy to get open pretty quick. He's not as twitchy as Zay Flowers, but you think about Todd Monken coming from Baltimore and just what that slightly undersized, I mean, very undersized for Zay Flowers, slightly undersized maybe for Omar Cooper. What he was in Baltimore, I'm going to try and replicate that here. So I get an offensive, I get a left tackle, and I get a wide receiver. I'm going to try to get this offense to respectable, especially if I just hired Todd Monken and I don't want people to think I'm a buffoon as the GM. I need to make this offense work a little bit no matter who the quarterback is. So I'm going Omar Cooper Jr. there at 24 for the Cleveland Browns. Up next, Ben, you have the Chicago Bears at 25. And I will say, Ben, go. I haven't given you much room to talk here. You could talk a little more while I'm typing things up. So you have fun. You enjoy yourself. What are you going to do at 25 for Chicago?
So the Bears are taking edge Cassius Howell from Texas A&M. They could go in more than one direction if they wanted to, but they would love to really add somebody who can get to the quarterback. Cassius Howell has some limitations, but this is a guy that has moves, has speed off the edge, and holds up physically in terms of toughness, not getting pushed around when he's trying to get to the quarterback. So this is a guy that will help the Bears out in getting after the quarterback. And so Cassius Howell, edger from Texas A&M.
For Cassius Howell, is he someone you think is going to play every down? And I won't even say year one, but in the first 2 years of Howell being on the Bears or anywhere specifically, do you think he's going to become an every down player? Or here at the back end of this first round of a draft that's a little bit lighter at the top, has a lot of nice players, but not a lot of like starter to star players. Is this a, hey, we're at least getting a designated pass rusher to help us on third down, and if he develops into more of that, great, but I'm drafting him solely for a 50-60% snap guy to just pin his ears back.
Yeah, for me, especially first year, he is a designated pass rusher. That's going to be his only concern in year one. Now, me and Austin, and you too, actually, we had extensive conversations about his ability to drop into pass coverage. He did it quite a bit. I think in some ways he holds up very well, and in other ways he really struggles. He's very frenetic in pass coverage, but he's got the athleticism to do it. So, come year 2 or 3, if we want to experiment in practice with dropping him into pass coverage, I think he can do it, but I don't think he'll ever do anything close to as well as he gets to the quarterback. So, no, ultimately, I think this ceiling probably is a 60% snap player, and his main job will always be getting to the quarterback. But I do feel like there's some value there down the road at learning pass coverage and holding up in that capacity. There are times he'll blow up run plays, but he can get swallowed up in the run game a lot. So you don't want to lean on him ever for stopping the run at the NFL level. He'll never be good at that.
Yeah, I like Howell as a like on the line of scrimmage at wide nine, like as wide as you want, man, and just like bob your head at the quarterback like
Yeah.
crazy and then drop straight back into the flat. I think he can cover the flat really well. And if you even just want him to do
Yeah.
that, like you said, I think he's good at I think that's where he could knife in and help with run support, right? Even more than just like being on the line trying to hold the edge. If he's dropping back
Yeah.
just into the flat a little bit, he can find a lane to the running back. But yeah, certainly not going to hold up against the edge. But I think that plan makes a lot of sense. Designated pass rusher. Can I get 8 sacks a year from him playing 60% of the snaps? I think that would be a win for Chicago, what they need. All right, the Buffalo Bills at 26. Payne, you're going from one unhinged GM to another tonight. This is great. What are you going to do for Brandon Beane, who is not worried about the wide receiver position at all? He has no concerns over it, especially because he traded a second round pick and spent a bunch of money on DJ Moore. There's no problem here.
Yeah.
Don't write in the newspaper that we have a wide receiver problem. What are you going to do here for the Bills?
Not taking wide receiver, in case you
But
were
yeah,
wondering.
no problem.
Because they're already like what second in payroll wide receiver or whatever it is. So yeah, whatever. I actually was before today. I would have said, oh, this is edge, no doubt. But then they went and signed Bradley Chubb to a pretty decent sized deal. I think that signals that it might be their time to move on from Matt Milano, who they have yet, at least as of right now, have not signed, right?
Yeah,
Okay.
I've heard no
Just
news
wanna
on
make
one
sure.
Matt Milano.
Want to make
Yeah.
sure that they haven't brought it back. I am going to be taking CJ Allen for the Bills here. Very much like a green dot successor to this defense. He was the primary communicator and defensive centerpiece to that Georgia defense this year. Great in run defense, pretty good instincts in both the run and pass coverage. Pretty good, pretty good athlete ability to cover the field. I think even if it's not like the ideal win now move for the Bills, I think that ultimately it provides a sound foundation in the middle of that defense to succeed. As a successor to what Milano was for so many years for them. We kind of saw Milano, even though at times we saw him have elite play last year. He's been too frequently injured to be relied upon to play late into the year. So I think that getting his successor here for a guy that I have pretty high on my board is good value. And it's just a matter of I think it's a perfect fit for them.
He definitely gives you everything you want from a communication, IQ, standpoint, I would wonder about continuing to get smaller at the position when like the whole McDermott thing was small light guys. They have Terrell Bernard, um, also at linebacker, but CJ like he also when he gets a real beat on, he doesn't hit like a little guy. And Bernard's the same way. Like
Yeah.
they play bigger than they are, and like that's kind of the whole idea. Um, but I do like Allen the player, and I do think this is a good spot in the draft for him for sure. San Francisco 49ers are up. Ronan, you're just getting all the nice, easy breezy California teams. Look at that. I will say, just as a programming note, Osa Odighizuwa from the Cowboys just got traded to the 49ers like a couple hours before we recorded. So, um, if defensive tackle was high on your board, not that, it has to not be, just providing context for everybody, that did just happen before we recorded. Um, Ronan, what are you going to do here for the 49ers?
Before airing, interior defensive line was definitely more so in consideration. But I think we're actually going to go ahead and attack the secondary here. We're going to try and improve the cornerback room, and we're going to go with the other corner out of Tennessee and Colton Hood. He's sticky in man. He comes downhill and run support really well for being a corner. I think he can do a number of things re really well for or for the 49ers defense. I was in between he and Avion Terrell, and truthfully, Terrell might be a little, maybe even higher on my big board. I don't have it in front of me, but I think due to his size and the division that they play in, I mean, you're going against, Puka Nacua. JSN isn't necessarily super huge, but you got to be able to contend on those 50-50 balls with, these receivers.
Mhm.
So that's why I ultimately went with Colton Hood here at 27 for the Niners.
Yeah, I do think that distinction makes sense. If you're going to have an outside corner, Terrell, I do also like better as a player, but I also don't have a lot wrong with Hood. And if identity wise, you're just like, I'd rather just have a big corner and try to develop that than overcome, a smaller corner, even if he's a little bit more talented. I do think I get that. Houston is up at 28. Austin, you are responsible. You have the Houston Texans, uh, fate in your hands here. What are you going to do?
Caden Proctor has fallen into our laps.
Sure has.
This is a very easy, don't overthink it kind of situation. You need some help online on the interior in particular. Caden Proctor is a really solid tackle prospect, but uh, his openness to move to guard is intriguing, and his size and how being at guard would kind of almost eliminate every single weakness he has on tape because he has a lot of them, but most of them are to do with just like lateral agility and pad level after like a lot of reps. Like when he's on the field, his pad level, like fourth quarter, his pad level is really high because he's also a monster of a human being. So him being at guard, I think, really just eliminates that, and it allows him to be a mauler. He's actually, I think, really good when he pulls, which he didn't have to do it too much. But in the few reps I saw of him pulling, he was good. So at guard, he'll be doing that. I really don't see how this can't be the best pick possible here for us. So I'm doing that, no problem, no questions.
Yeah, the talent is certainly there. You're 100% right. Him moving to guard it highlights all of his best qualities and it negates all of his worst qualities. It would be really ironic if Houston did this and it was we traded Laramie Tunsil because we didn't like the culture in our O line room, and then they get Caden Proctor. But maybe that culture is better now, right? Maybe Tunsil being gone and Trent Brown is now kind of the steady vet out there. Like maybe who knows? But I think for what Houston needs to do and needs to accomplish, the fact that Proctor, you're gonna get a swing on him here at 28, considering where the rest of this roster is and what other moves they've made in free agency. I think this is a great pick, and it's too easy to slide him in at left guard there. So he gets to stay on the left side, and then him and Ursary next to each other is just like literally tipping the scales on that side, like more than any other tackle guard duo on any side of the line. So I enjoy that. Ben, you are back up. You have the second pick for the Kansas City Chiefs via the Los Angeles Rams, trading away Trent McDuffie. Um, what are you going to do for the Chiefs at 29?
Yeah, we're gonna make a controversial move here, but that's okay. I'm used to it. The guy we're gonna go ahead and pick up here is Emmanuel McNeil Warren, safety out of Toledo, is who we're adding. Obviously, we lost a lot of guys to the secondary. We added Alohi Gilman back in at safety. Chamari Connor will move to nickel. Jaden Hicks will come in as rotation guy. Okay. Um, Avion Terrell is interesting, but I just really love McNeil Warren a whole lot better in terms of overall size, athleticism. So that's what we're going to do. Kansas City Chiefs mixing, mixing in some real talent here that a lot of times we don't get access to, counting our first round top 10 pick as well.
I do like the commitment of saying we need to overhaul something for this Chiefs roster this season, and then just going whole hog for the defense instead in the first round. How much did you factor in one of these wide receivers here? And then what was the factor of thinking of what could be available in the second round? Kind of like I think Peyton was the one that said this about second round safety versus second round corner. How much of this is kind of you like what's on offense in the second round, or was this just another talent play for you? Like there's a hole at safety for the Chiefs. McNeil Warren would be a good fit for Spags. Maybe Spags stood on the table and said, "I need this Toledo safety right now," and so you did it. How did that process go?
Yeah, it really was about McNeil Warren being just a guy that we really I thought about taking him earlier, didn't quite pull the trigger on it, but it really was about McNeil Warren and us loving him. Having said that, I cannot deny that rattling around in my brain is the fact that this is a very deep group of receivers who have flaws. And some of those flaws are keeping those guys in our mock tonight out of the first round. Some of them may sneak in here at the last couple of picks for sure. I wouldn't be at all surprised. But you look at the flaws and you realize there's a cluster that's going to be sitting back there, and somebody probably still will be sitting there for us at 40. So I can't deny that that wasn't a possibility here as well.
All right, I'm up next with the Denver Broncos, and the slide's going to stop here for Peter Woods out of Clemson. John Franklin Myers leaves in free agency. I paid a lot of defensive players to linebackers. Several of the defensive linemen over the last couple seasons have been paid by Denver. I've got a young secondary. This defense is the lifeblood of the team, and with Bo Nix coming off of the injury, I don't want to. It's hard to say this, but I don't want to make any investments in offense because I don't know what my quarterback is anyways at this point. Like especially the way Sean Payton's talking about him in the media, like who really knows what he's going to want to do with that. So I'll take another round, a swing in the second round. There are wide receivers that I really like here too, and could actually provide what I think Denver needs. But with so many questions for me surrounding that offense, and Peter Woods being a talented player and could really come in and be like young juice for this group that is a little bit older and kind of expensive. If I get to just kind of add him to what's already going on, this might be the team that can get the best out of Peter Woods as well, considering the situation. So Peter Woods out of Clemson, his slide falls. He gets to go on the stage on night one of the draft. He's going to be taken 30th overall by the Denver Broncos. Peyton, you are up with the AFC champion New England Patriots. What are you going to do?
Yeah, I due to technical difficulty, who did Ronan take?
Ronan took what Colton Hood with the 49ers
Thank
at
you. Okay.
27.
I just wanted to make sure that I got that right because I thought that's who that was, but I wanted to make sure. All right. Now that my incompetency is not getting in the way of me making this pick, I am going to take a guy that I did not expect to make it this far. And given that I was actually really hoping that Warren would slide here, but obviously Ben takes him for the Chiefs at 29. And instead, I'm actually going to take another notable position need that this pick is actually being rumored to maybe be traded away for a player at this position. But I'm going to stay and take Denzel Boston, who I did not expect to make it this far. Pretty decent size at the wide receiver position, just a really good player at the catch point. Really a true need for this team, considering the other kinds of receivers that are on the roster currently. He fits a prototype that they do not have in that wide receiver room. And having a wide receiver core of Boston, Dobbs, and then having your field stretcher and Kyle Williams is a really good trio. I think they can build around Drake May, and I thought about, I will say, like, the other player I was kind of picking between was him and Blake Miller out of Clemson, because I think Morgan Moses is kind of coming to the end of the road. It's just a
Mm-hmm.
matter of, do you pick the wider? It's kind of the same. I don't want to say the same discussion, but it's kind of a similar thing to um, last year with the Panthers. We had this discussion about, like, do you take, granted, much early in the draft, but like, do you take the wide receiver to benefit your quarterback, or do you take, the offensive line? I think it was offensive lineman. I can't remember what position it was that the Panthers were like debating between, but similar discussion. And I think that, given that it's very clear that now that Diggs is gone as well, that they do need a wide receiver especially this kind of wide receiver in that room. I think it's a perfect fit in New England.
And this is starting to feel even more Vrabel-y in New England than it already did, because Kevin Byard also goes
Yeah.
to the Patriots. And now all of a sudden you look at the wide receiver room and everybody's huge. They're gonna be blocking. They're gonna be getting 50-50 balls from Drake May, and they're gonna have a good time doing it. So I'm not the biggest Denzel Boston fan, but again, like, it's gonna be hard for me to look at any receiver going to play with Drake May and think that it's like an abject disaster. So I'm good with this one. All right, finishing things off, Ronan, you have the Super Bowl champion Seattle Seahawks. There's no way you could get this wrong, right? They win the Super Bowl. Like, all is good for Seattle. So what are you going to do here as John Schneider?
After losing Reek Woolen, who, he got paid, what was it, 1 year, 15 million to the Eagles. So, solid corner, not by no means premier. But after losing Woolen, I would really like to improve that cornerback room just a little bit more. And the way that the board fell, isn't necessarily my favorite. Again, I like Avion Terrell, but he does kind of fit more in that nickel slot position. But I think that's who we're going to go with here due to his versatility. And that way, maybe you can free up Witherspoon and Eamon Ward to do some funky stuff. Because Terrell does have the ability to play outside. It's just his size might make him a little bit of a liability. But I think you can absolutely throw him out there, and he will still be able to produce. So we're going to roll with Terrell to wrap things up here at 32.
I love this. This Terrell is such a Seahawk, because of that, like, undersized but just like want to punch you in the face mentality, and whatever role he kind of ends up fitting in. I mean, especially for this first, if this were to happen in year one, like, you might literally just be like come in and dime as the fourth corner and just like run around and try to mess some people up, but can sneaky cover guys bigger than him, is faster than you think, has good recovery speed. Um, I really like this pick and this value. And when you think about Seattle getting Eamon Warrior last year as like we can see exactly how this would fit. I could see exactly how Avion Terrell would fit here for the Seattle Seahawks as well. All right, so that wraps it up. There's our bottom eight there. Again, here's everybody. Here's all the shows. So Box Score Network. If you're here on, well, this is only going on Box Score Network YouTube. So if you're here on Box Score Network YouTube, thanks for being here. Like, subscribe, comment, draft content for you 24/7. We have new stuff going up all the time for the 2026 draft. Here's one more look at our top eight. But for Peyton, for Ronan, for Austin, for Ben, and all of the shows, again, that you see all around the tiles on the screen here, make sure you guys check out those shows when you get a chance. Make sure you stay on Box Score Network, stay updated on what we're doing. And we will talk to you all again very, very soon. Have a great night, and happy drafting.